Hey guys, let's get more news about Steelers, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Mike Tomlin passing Chuck Nolan wins not gonna mean anything without another Super Bowl, Fittipaldo says. Former Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Chuck Noll has the 8th most wins in NFL history with 193. Current Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin isn't too far behind him with 173 and has plenty of time to catch him. He just signed a 3-year contract extension that keeps him in Pittsburgh through 2027. Tomlin only has to average just over 5 wins per season over the next 4 years to pass Noll as the winningest head coach in team history. Given Noll's legacy, that would be quite a feat, and not one that anyone will come close to breaking soon. Not many coaches stay in one place for decades at a time. But for Tomlin, for the Steelers, for the fans, that doesn't matter, Ray Fittipaldo says. It doesn't matter if it doesn't come with some more hardware. Chuck Noll didn't have a non-losing season streak, sure, but he has 4 Lombardis. I think that's coming, Fittipaldo said on 93.7 The Fan yesterday about Tomlin becoming the winningest coach in team history. No one who follows the Steelers or lives in Pittsburgh thinks that means anything. I think it's all about Super Bowl victories. Right now, he's tied with Bill Cowher with 1. Even if he gets to Chuck Noll's career wins total, it's not gonna mean anything unless he wins another Super Bowl. Tomlin became the youngest head coach in NFL history to win a Super Bowl back in 2008. The Steelers had only hired him the previous season, just 2 years removed from winning the Super Bowl with Bill Cowher. Cowher spent 15 years as the Steelers head coach and finally won in his 13th season. But only Chuck Noll managed to win more than one. Going into his 18th season, Tomlin has now spent 15 years as the Steelers head coach without winning a Super Bowl. That is the entire length of Cowher's tenure here. And the Steelers haven't even come close in a long time. Their last conference finals appearance was in 2016, their last Super Bowl appearance in 2010. Mike Tomlin is certainly on a path to the Hall of Fame, but to me he's quite a ways away from being in Chuck Noll territory, Fittipaldo insisted. That guy won 4 Super Bowls, had a ton of playoff success when he was the head coach. Of course, Noll coached in a very different era in the 1970s and 80s than Tomlin faces now. One can make arguments for and against, for which is more difficult. There are more teams to compete against today, yet also more playoff spots. There is free agency today, meaning more roster turnover, and more generalized information. It's not as easy to hide information on prospects these days, let's say. Chuck Noll remains the only head coach other than Bill Belichick with at least 4 Super Bowl trophies. Andy Reid just joined Joe Gibbs and Bill Walsh with 3, but nobody else has more than 2. If Tomlin should win another, he will be the 15th head coach in NFL history to win 2. And the Steelers would be the 4th franchise to have multiple head coaches with multiple Super Bowls. Nobody will care, though, if they have multiple head coaches with 193 career wins. Steelers signed themselves up for mediocrity with Mike Tomlin extension. There are many words that we can use to describe the Pittsburgh Steelers in recent years. However, none seems more fitting than the word stale. The defensive concepts are vanilla and the offense has been non-existent for years. But the man who's in charge of it all isn't being disciplined, he's been rewarded. On June 10, Mike Tomlin inked a 3-year contract extension as the head coach of the Steelers. He was set to coach in the final year of his deal in 2024, but the extension will keep him in Pittsburgh until at least 2027. This means that Tomlin has another 4 years to prove his team can make a deep playoff push, something he did not prove in the previous 4 years, or the 4 years before that. Pittsburgh's most recent Super Bowl appearance came all the way back in 2010. Since then, the team has won just 3 playoff games over the past 13 years. It's even more concerning when you look at the context. The opposing quarterbacks leading the charge in these 3 postseason victories since 2011 have been none other than A.J. McCarron, Bengals, Matt Moore, Dolphins, and Alex Smith, Chiefs. Their most recent playoff win came during the 2016 postseason over 7 years ago. In their previous 3 playoff games dating back to 2020, the Steelers have lost by multiple scores in each contest. One thing goes without saying, Mike Tomlin will keep the Steelers competitive during the regular season. Such has been the case in all 17 seasons as the team's head coach. In fact, Tomlin has never played in a meaningless season finale since taking over the team. Let's give credit where credit is due. Tomlin has done a lot with nothing at times, and his 173-100-2 record deserves to be recognized. However, one could argue that it's Tomlin's vision and philosophy of winning that are holding the Steelers back in a rapidly changing NFL. Tomlin's goal is, and always has been, to play great defense, run the ball effectively, and control the clock to win football games. This is a strategy that has worked in the regular season but has proven futile over the past decade in the postseason. As other teams have the ability to air it out and put up points on the board in a hurry, the Steelers' backward philosophy doesn't allow them to effectively play from behind when matched up against good AFC teams in the playoffs. This is where Tomlin has been left in the dust. If you are in favor of Pittsburgh staying competitive each year with 9-ish wins and a shot at a playoff berth, you're no doubt ecstatic about Mike Tomlin's 3-year extension. But based on what we have witnessed for over a decade now, it's hard to say that the Steelers didn't just sign themselves up for 3 more years of mediocrity. Ian Rappaport would be surprised if Broncos traded Courtland Sutton. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been linked with a number of potential wide receivers who could be traded this offseason, but with it now June, a trade seems less likely by the day. One of the receivers that Pittsburgh was linked with was Denver Broncos' Courtland Sutton, a former teammate of Russell Wilson who sat out voluntary team activities in search of a new contract. But Sutton is returning for mandatory minicamp this week, and NFL insider Ian Rappaport told KOA Sports in Denver that he would be surprised if Sutton got traded. "I would be surprised if they traded him. I really would. There's a reason that teams almost never trade starting caliber players this time of year, because you can't replace them," Rappaport said. Denver did draft wide receiver Troy Franklin in the 4th round, so there was speculation that he could be a potential Sutton replacement, but in general the Denver receiving room isn't all that talented, and they're going to want to give rookie quarterback Bo Nix as much help as he can get. Currently, the Broncos receivers consist of Sutton, Josh Reynolds, Marvin Mims Jr., Franklin, the oft-injured Tim Patrick and Lil Jordan Humphrey as their top options. There was no one comparable to Sutton available for them to acquire, and for a team not expected to be anything special this season, making an effort to replace him wouldn't make much sense, anyway. The Steelers might be able to roll with what they currently have at wide receiver given how Arthur Smith runs his offense, but I think everyone involved in the organization would be a lot more comfortable if they had a legitimate second option at receiver opposite George Pickens. Trading away Deontay Johnson helped the Steelers improve at corner with the acquisition of Dante Jackson, but if the receiver room struggles, it's going to be a risk that didn't pay off. The Steelers could still look to continue to add to the room, but it's likely going to come with players cut by other teams around final roster cuts rather than making a trade for someone who could come in and be an immediate upgrade to the room. Sutton would have paired well as someone who played well with Russell Wilson in Denver and who thinks quite highly of him, but a trade just doesn't seem very likely at all at this point in time. And you, fan? What do you think of the situation of Courtland Sutton? Leave your opinion in the comments.